Hi, fifth graders. Welcome back to the Fabled fourth graders of Aesop Elementary. March Madness. March was testing time at Aesop Elementary School. Everyone take out a number 2 pencil, directed Mr. Jupiter. Calvin raised his hand. Are we being given the ISBN ACTs? He asked. No, corrected Bernadette. These are the YMCA GREs. Actually, said Rose, they're the HIJK elemental P's. In the back row, Stanford snorted. Get serious, he said. We're taking the ESBAF CAEF GAEs, otherwise known as the Every State Basic Abilities and Fundamental Cognitive Assessment of Essential Fourth Grade Achievement Evaluation Test. Whatever, shrugged the others. I couldn't agree more, said Mr. Jupiter. Still, he looked around the room. Does everyone have a pencil? The children nodded. Then I suppose we should get started, he said. And for the rest of the month, the fourth graders did nothing else. Moral of the story? Time is often wasted on things of little consequence. Catch. Emberly Everclass had the best attendance record at Aesop Elementary School. Since his first morning in kindergarten, he hadn't missed a single day. Not one. Don't you ever get sick? Asked Rose one afternoon. Nope, said Emberly. Don't you ever go on vacation? Asked Amisha. Nope, said Emberly. Don't you ever play hooky? Asked Lenny. Nope, said Emberly. But all these questions made Emberly start to think about it. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized the truth. He would have traded all his perfect attendance medals for just one single day off. He could just see himself lounging on the couch in his incredible Hulk PJs, watching cartoons, doing nothing. Beautiful, he sighed. I know I am, but what are you? Asked Victoria. Absent, vowed Emberly. The next morning before school, Emberly gave an award-winning performance. He coughed, he sniffed, he pretended to wheeze as he groaned, "Oh, I am so sick." His father wasn't fooled. Get moving, he said. You don't want to be late. Besides having perfect attendance, Emberly was always punctual. What's a guy have to do to get a day off? He muttered. Minutes later, he was out the door. A block from school, he saw Varicella Soster and her mother playing in their front yard. The 3-year-old, he noticed, was covered with red spots. What's wrong with Varicella? He asked Mrs. Zoster. Stay back, warned Mrs. Zoster. Varicella's sick. She has the chicken pox. Catch, cried Varicella. She tossed the ball to Ham. Emberly dodged it. She doesn't look sick, he said, except for the spots. She doesn't feel sick either, said Mrs. Zoster, but the little darling can't go back to nursery school until her spots form scabs. No school, chirped Varicella. No school? Emberly asked curiously. Why not? Because she's highly contagious, explained Mrs. Zoster. If Varicella went to school now, in 2 weeks' time, the rest of her class would come down with a chicken pox. 2 weeks, chirped Varicella. Mrs. Zoster nodded. That's how long it is between the time a person is exposed to the chicken pox and the time they break out. Emberly wondered what he would be doing in 2 weeks. Looking into his future, he saw the usual. Book reports, spelling tests, organic geochemistry. He seized his chance. Swooping down, he kissed Varicella smack on her red speckled nose. Yuck! Yelped Varicella. Oh no! Shrieked Mrs. Zoster. So long, perfect attendance, whooped Emberly, and he ran the rest of the way to school. During morning announcements, Mrs. Struggle said, just a reminder that Nurse Betadine will be administering booster shots to the 4th grade. This will happen in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Everyone but Emberly groaned. During lunch, Mrs. Bunce bellowed through her bullhorn. Listen up, 4th graders. You've just been picked as my new cafeteria helpers. You start in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Everyone but Emberly moaned. And during gym class, Mrs. Gluteal said, guess what, boys and girls? Our next physical fitness unit will be ballet. Be sure to bring a pair of tights to class in the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Everyone but Emberly whined. Later that day, during science, Mr. Jupiter clapped his hands. Class, I have some exciting news. The fourth graders turned off their Bunsen burners and pushed up their safety goggles. They waited to hear the exciting news. We will be taking a field trip to the Esther C. Williams Public Natorium, where we will conduct hands-on experiments with buoyancy and currents. Fourth graders were still waiting for the exciting news. Aren't you thrilled? Asked Mr. Jupiter. I guess, said Calvin. He shot a confused look at Missy. Maybe, said Missy. Bewildered, she looked at Rachel. Said Rachel. She slid down in her seat. In the front row, Stanford raised his hand. I'm thrilled, he said. You're annoying, said Lenny. Little do you know, sniffed Stanford, natorium is a scientific word for swimming pool. Mr. Jupiter is taking us to the swimming pool to learn about floating and splashing. I might even teach you a few water polo moves, added Mr. Jupiter. After all, I hold the 1996 Water Polo World Cup. Hooray, cried Ashley A. Whoopee, cried Ashley B. This is going to be lots more fun than last year's trip to the American Museum of Natural Gas, cried Ashley Z. Yeah, agreed Humphrey. That trip really stunk. At his desk, Emberly decided that this was the best day of his life. First the chickenpox and now the swimming pool. Bernadette raised her hand. When are we going? She asked. In 2 weeks, replied Mr. Jupiter. 2 weeks? Everyone but Emberly cheered. I'm buying a new bathing suit, said Victoria, a blue one to match my eyes. I'm bringing my inflatable alligator raft, said Ham. I need a new nose plug, said Melvin. The others ignored him. Mr. Jupiter, Emberly cried, can we move the trip up? Can we go tomorrow or what about next month? Mr. Jupiter shook his head. The details have already been worked out. Is there a problem? No, replied Emberly. He slumped in his seat. Maybe, he told himself, he wouldn't break out with the chickenpox. Maybe varicella wasn't all that contagious. But deep down, he knew the truth. In 2 weeks, he'd be scratching and itching while his classmates splashed and swam. His misery showed on his face. You look drearier than a rainy day, said Lil, and she broke into verse. Down your sad face a lone tear will trace until it reaches a place where unhappiness dwells. Cut it out, Lil, said Emberly. I'm not in a poetic mood. What's the matter? Asked Calvin. Don't you like swimming pools? I love swimming pools, said Emberly. But suddenly, inspiration struck. Emberly leaped to his feet. Friends, he said in his most persuasive voice, the one he had learned at the carnival last summer, I have a secret to tell you. Curious, the others gathered around. On the day of the field trip, I will be doing something far more wonderful than swimming. I will be lounging on my couch in my PJs, watching cartoons and doing nothing. Nothing, said Victoria. Nothing, repeated Emberly. Now I ask you, what could be better than that? Yes, you will have the pleasure of paddling around a pool for a few brief hours, but the rest of the week, while I'm lounging, you'll be getting shots, getting shouted out, and getting chapped from two tight tights. Icky poo, shivered Humphrey. You can say that again, said Emberly. Icky poo, shivered Humphrey. Emberly kept talking. There is a way to save yourself from this misery. All you have to do is visit Varicella Softer today. Go right after school and give the small tot a big kiss. In return, Varicella will give you a very slight case of chickenpox. Once you've made the exchange, you too can stay home from school. What do you say, friends? I say, sign me up, said Bernadette. I say, count me in, said Calvin. I say, baloney, cried Melvin. He elbowed his way to the front of the group. You know what I think? I think you don't really want to get the chickenpox now. I think that there is some way you could get rid of the germs, you would. I think you really want to go swimming. But since you can't, you don't want anyone else to go either. Ignore him, said Emberly. But for once, the others didn't. Moral of the story, misery loves company. Have a great day, everyone.